As a Title I reading specialist and curriculum leader in our school district, I often stop and consider my role in improving the lives of students who fall outside the cultural mainstream. When you read the definition of a social equity literacy teacher, I feel I fit this description. We strive to teach children to read because we understand and see the role and power literacy has and the opportunities available through literacy. We want to level the playing field for all students, especially those living in poverty. I am Stacy Green, and as I shared, I am a Title I reading specialist and curriculum leader at USD 271. Many of the students I work with in Title I also fall under the category of free and reduced lunch status. These students mainly come in for the need of reading, but I do have a few math students. Above all, I want literacy to go beyond the mainstream. Recently, I read an article by Jackie Roll, Minnesota Teacher of the Year 2012. She shared the two following questions that she is most often asked. What exactly is culturally relevant teaching, and why does a white teacher from an affluent suburb with 82% white students even care about this? She went on to share this response. Culturally relevant teachers do not teach all students the same way in the name of equity. Instead, they create lessons in which students' experiences are discussed and infused in the learning, and in which students have the opportunity to learn by building on their personal backgrounds and academic strengths. Using strategies that allow students to draw on their cultural frames of reference brings personal relevance to that lesson. Since the brain needs emotion and meaning to pay attention, making learning personal and emotional for students can bring about the most lasting lessons. I'd like to now share with you a summary of 5 articles I found on literacy beyond the mainstream. Here's one of the questions we must ask. How do we improve the life opportunities of students who fall outside the cultural mainstreams? We must see students' inherent literacy capacities. We must help students realize their fullest literacy potential, and we must challenge the policies and practices that undermine students' literacy achievement. Here are a few societal factors. Societal equity teachers understand that societal factors influence literacy achievement. Institutional racism and poverty are major factors that undermine students' access to mainstream knowledge and the literacies valued in school. Literacy failure cannot be attributed to students' efforts alone. It is much more complex than that. Rothstein, in his article entitled Whose Problem is Poverty, went on to share some vital steps for reform. We must provide good pediatric and dental care, expand existing low-income housing subsidy programs, provide higher quality early childhood care, increase the earned income tax credit, and promote mixed income housing developments. As schools, we need to fund more after-school programs. There is a complexity of culture. In Northhouse's book on leadership that we studied for our course, he shared more about the debate on the meaning of culture. It is such an abstract word, it is hard to define. Culture is dynamic, and in short, it is a way of life. It's our customs and a script of the group of people. And in a Reading Today article, the complexity of culture was discussed further. Culture is more than the foods we eat or the holidays we celebrate. Culture is multifaceted, dynamic, and shaped by power. Cultural attributes include beliefs, values, and ways of interacting, and the most important thing is that these change over time. Gorski, in a 2008 article, wants to help us dispel the myth of the culture of poverty. He goes on to share 4 myths. The first myth was poor people are unmotivated and have weak work ethics. He backs this myth up to say that this is not true because in recent research he found 83% of children from low-income families have at least one employed parent. The second myth he wants to dispel is that poor parents are uninvolved in their children's learning. Again, the same thing. He found that low-income parents hold the same attitudes about education that wealthy parents do. The third myth is that poor people are linguistically deficient and deficient. Again, he had the data to back this up and show that it was not true. All people, regardless of their language and language varieties, use a full continuum of language registers. He goes in to talk about many different backgrounds and cultures, but he does dispel this myth. And the fourth one was that poor people tend to abuse drugs and alcohol. He dispels this myth by sharing the following. Although drug sales are more visible in poor neighborhoods, drug use is equally distributed across poor, middle, and upper class. I would encourage you to read more in his article to find out about these myths and the research he finds to dispel them. We must be a language, cultural, and connection. Society assigns values to literacies and languages based on groups' access to power. School literacy practices are formed around mainstream lifestyles and practices, and we must build on the language and literacy knowledge that children bring to school. These are just a few of the things that we as teachers can do to make these connections. Teaching from cultural perception. Funds of knowledge. What does this mean? As social equity teachers, we must draw from our students' lives and cultural worlds to build instruction. In a community, this might mean visiting an African American church and finding more out about their literacy through their songs and history. We can also take modern hip-hop music and look at some of those literacy connections. There's robust learning to be found, but we must be built on their everyday funds of knowledge. We must also transform our practices. Literacy curricula and teaching practices can reproduce the status quo or change it. Students' literacy development should be based on, for what greater purpose is literacy being developed? And students need to be able to read, write, and think critically so they can participate in society. How do we go about our lesson planning? We must develop lessons based on student conversations about their needs and their interests. As educators, we can invite students to take part in larger community projects that attempt to solve problems and create alternatives to oppressive situations. And we can connect the curriculum to the outside world in a tangible way. Cultural self-perspective. It is helpful for the social equity literacy teacher to strive to understand who they are based on race, class, and culture. From that, we can study and self-reflect, which will move us toward a place where we can talk about sensitive issues such as race and poverty in a classroom. We must respect our students, know our students, and advocate for them when it comes to teaching literacy. In closing, what can we do as social equity literacy teachers? We need to stop trying to fix poor students and start addressing ways in which our schools perpetuate classism. We must consider how our own biases affect our interactions with and the expectations of our students. Thank you.